morning, I'm Al Vanderberg and this is Issues and Impact, a television show dedicated to bringing leaders of our region and state in to talk about issues that impact us on the local level, our local governments, our residents of this great West Michigan region. Today, I'm thrilled to have with us, immediately to my left, Colonel Christy Isuues, who's the Director of the Michigan State Police, and also Gary Rosema, who's the Sheriff of the Ottawa County Sheriff's Department. And we're going to have an interesting discussion today about some of the state and local policing issues that impact us all. First, the Governor Snyder, shortly after he took office, wanted to kind of, I think, get a grip on criminal justice issues around the state. And so he put together a team called CLEAR. And Sheriff Gary Rosema was tagged to be the chair of CLEAR. And of course, the Colonel's a member of that effort as well. And so I thought that perhaps you could tell viewers, first, what is CLEAR? What does it stand for? And then also, what kinds of issues and topics have you been tasked with looking at on behalf of our governor?
Well, that's a pretty loaded question, but CLEAR is the Council on Law Enforcement and Reinvention. And Governor Snyder decided that he would like a group of individuals put together to really advise his staff and himself on issues that were impacting the criminal justice system, not only law enforcement, but the entire criminal justice system. So they started to develop a group of individuals, and it's made up of not only law enforcement, but prosecutors, the courts, we have the Department of Corrections, the State Court Administrator's Office, we have labor on it. It's a pretty unique group of individuals that come together on a monthly basis to really inform his staff and to keep him abreast of some of the issues that challenge his administration on a routine basis.
I remember when the team first got started, there was an awful lot of controversy about lien and whether counties should make their payments or not. Ottawa County had held some back, and the state actually withheld some payments that were due other areas of the county operation. And it seems like once this group got put together, that issue just disappeared.
Well, that was one of the pieces of low-hanging fruit that we thought we'd take on originally, and that, along with a lot of the issues that CLEAR has looked at. And again, it's been an opportunity to bring various groups together to just look at things, not only levels of policing, but what's going on in the courts, what's going on in the Department of Corrections. And CJIS was one of those things, and Colonel Isuues, who actually chairs CJIS, has really redefined what CJIS looks like and the impact it has on the state of Michigan.
Very good. I think one of the things that we heard CLEAR might take on was, and this is a question really, was there kind of a look statewide at where all policing services are? I mean, you've got the state police, you've got county sheriff departments around the state, you've got city and township police departments, village police departments. Was there kind of an attempt to look at all that and see if it made sense or if that should be changed at all?
Well, that really was one of the things that at least the field kind of felt that when the governor put this organization and council in place, that he was going to look at. And the governor was big on consolidation issues, and as we started looking at law enforcement services, it became very clear at the time that issues of consolidation, even though they may be rewarded on the state level, through additional funding, the important issue of consolidation is still left up to the locals. So they have to decide what level of law enforcement services they want. So in that process, I think everybody's taken a different look and a different stance on consolidation, and consolidation is really left up to a local decision to be made. But I think in the process, we've all looked at our operations and figured out how we can do things a little bit better. The Colonel has taken on a pretty aggressive stance as far as regional policing for her organization, and I think CLEAR has been an integral part of all the different law enforcement disciplines looking at how we do service.
Very good. Well, Colonel Isuues, it appears the state police scales its efforts around the state really based on the strength of the local efforts. Maybe you can do less in areas that maybe have a strong sheriff's department. In the case of Ottawa County, I know we have a whole lot of people on the road, and so maybe less road patrol and focus more in other areas. How do you balance your services across the state, I guess, as far as with that in mind?
Well, that's a good question. And as Sheriff Roseman mentioned, when Governor Snyder took office, we had experienced 8 years of a decline in the state police. Our budget was cut every single year. So we had just about 900 state troopers at the end of Governor Granholm's administration. We had about 1,380 when we started. So we were probably lowest that we'd been in the history of the department. And when you try to deploy troopers across the state, we feel very strongly that your tax dollar gives you a baseline. Now, communities, you're right, we do have more presence in some communities, but even in Ottawa County, where the sheriff has a great presence, and I look at Ottawa County and the relationship we have, the state police with the sheriff's department, is probably a perfect example of how it could work. You know, we do provide services, maybe not that trooper on the road is so visible, but I'm sure Sheriff Roseman would agree. I mean, the services we give Ottawa County in our forensic science division, some of our specialty services that he knows he can call any time of the day or night, and we're there for him. But if you look, we are addressing some more urban problems in the state right now. Michigan has 4 of the most violent, deadly cities in the nation currently. Yeah. And with that being said, many of these communities are under extreme financial strain, and for whatever reason, we do deploy differently. But I do feel strongly that troopers are in all 83 counties. To some level, some degree, and some get more of a trooper presence, but some may get other services more than others. So it's a baseline, basically.
You mentioned forensic science, and this is interesting because about 4 or 5 years ago, one of our judges asked if we would create a regional crime lab, and if the county would run this regional crime lab, and because at the time I think the state was 4 or 5 months behind maybe on DNA samples for trials. And I mentioned the sheriff yesterday. I haven't heard anything about that, and maybe you could update our viewers on what's happened with that whole thing.
Well, and this was an initiative in the clear, and this is where I'm able to talk to the sheriff, and we had a problem in our forensic science, and I'll tell you how that problem came to be. In the Detroit Police Department, they ran their own crime lab, and Detroit obviously is a big area, and they're about 25% of our workload in the laboratory. Their lab was found to be dysfunctional, so it was shut down under Governor Granholm. All that evidence was transferred over to the state police, all at once. And it did bring our lab very close down to our knees, and we found in one of their warehouses over 10,000 sexual assault kits that had never been tested. And so with that being said, we've worked through that, and under Governor Snyder's administration, he's provided us with a lot more resources. We just hired 20 more scientists, and this was a problem I brought to CLEAR, and the group talked about, let's support this. And why a local community would want their own crime lab with all the accreditation and all the level of equipment and services, it makes no sense to the state.
It didn't to me either, by the way.
Which is good. Let the state provide that service to you. And our goal, we are about a 50-day turnaround for right now on most disciplines. Our goal, we have a dashboard and a scorecard. With this governor being
As
a businessman,
we all do now. Yes,
I know, we're all into measures and metrics. Our goal is to get to a 30-day turnaround.
Oh, wow.
And most law enforcement is totally supporting our laboratory services. And so with that, we will get there. And I just, I will tell you, it was kind of a problem due to the influx of a lot of evidence that came to us rather quickly.
Well, that makes sense, and I don't know how widely that was even known, but that.
The interesting process, as the Colonel had indicated, is she brought that issue to CLEAR, and those of us that sit on CLEAR, our respective organizations, all emphasize that one of the important things as we move forward is to have proper laboratory analysis for local crime and crime solutions. So we took a kind of a core group of people out of CLEAR and developed a work group, and within about 3-4 months we were able to help, the Colonel put together a plan, and she brought it to the Governor, and he supported it wholeheartedly and said, if we are going to resolve crime and take criminals off streets, we do need to have proper staffing in those labs.
And speaking of staffing, I've heard there's a kind of a big retirement phase happening, or you're doing some major hiring for next year. And I heard this also City of Grand Rapids. I know it's even impacting us some, the ripple effect of that when some of the larger agencies do that, but what's happening with the workforce?
Well, obviously, when you're down to 900 troopers statewide, we did need to hire. We were losing to retirements, attrition, and this governor's allowed us to bring our strength back up to a manageable level. And we were actually, Sheriff Roseman and I were talking about that this morning. You know, I don't feel like the locals in the state are in competition for the same officer, because there is, this is a profession you choose. It's a career. And we feel very strongly like there's people that want to be sheriff deputies. Their goal is to work in that county level. And there's a percentage that want to be a city officer. They really are driven to be a city police officer. And then there's those that are driven to be state troopers. Although they're all police officers, they do distinctly have various roles that they play in that criminal justice. Okay. So although I don't believe we're competing for the same person, but you know, again, I know the college and the military that are coming back into the state, I know they're very attracted to law enforcement, that paramilitary type. Mm-hmm. So we're getting outstanding candidates. I know that Sheriff Roseman and I talk quite often about the new hires. These people are phenomenal. So as we kind of wrap up our career in the next few years, I think it's alive and well. We're seeing great talent come in that front door. So it's a good thing.
So how many are you adding this year?
We'll be hiring about 170 state troopers.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah, we'll run about 2 schools of, we'll start about 100 and we'll hopefully graduate about 80 plus. But the attrition, even in a recruit school, a lot of people just choose once they get in there that this isn't for them.
Okay.
For one reason or another.
Okay.
In the emphasis on hiring new troops is really one of the things that, as we look at it through the Michigan Sheriffs and the Michigan Chiefs, you know, we all support not only our laboratory but those specialty units, and we realize that through retirements and through people leaving her organization, in order for her to continue to build that base, it's extremely important to hire new people at the ground level too.
Yeah. Do you think the state will pursue a regional policing plan?
We actually are. We have a regional policing plan currently.
Okay.
We went in the very early stages of Governor Snyder. We went from having 62 work sites down to 29, and with that, it's called our regional policing plan. And we've maintained a presence in all 83 counties. However, troopers are more deployed. That vehicles are mobile office, so they're much more flexible and mobile than they've ever been before. And again, a trooper may have 3 to 4 county area that they're responsible for in a given shift.
I know I remember reading 3 years ago, I don't know, time flies, but I remember reading there was some controversy when there was a Grand Haven Post was on a list of possible closures, and when I looked at the logic for closing it, it made all the sense in the world to me. But then emotionally, for a city like Grand Haven, you know, that building, that presence is iconic in a way. And have you kind of, by going from the 60-some down to the 29, you're done with that process now, or do you still have to be looking at where you might need to move things around and close posts and that kind of thing?
And we are constantly looking at that. I think when it's all said and done, I'm sure we'll have far less than 29 at some point. Mm-hmm. And if you look at bricks and mortar, and this was my, the sell to the community and to even the employees of the state police, our retired employees, when they heard we were going to close even one post, the letters I got and not in support of an idea like that, but what the biggest thing we have to remember is bricks and mortar never save lives. Yes, that post in that community did serve a purpose, and that was maybe a beacon, but really to have that patrol car in that community, I never laid off a single trooper when our budget was cut the first year under Governor Snyder. We got rid of bricks and mortar, and the troopers are far more flexible and mobile now. And over time, I think you'll see, and the new troopers today, if that's their mobile office, they'll never know otherwise.
Right.
I don't believe you have to have a building to provide a service.
Right. Well, and as we've learned with so many changes in the educational community, Grand Rapids Public Schools comes to mind with some of the tough decisions they've had to make. Buildings don't educate kids either. Mm-hmm. I mean,
That's
it's
right.
the same kind of thing. So maybe for our listeners or our viewers, I'm curious. You mentioned some of the services, but maybe just run down what are some of the services that the state does offer our counties and our cities and other jurisdictions.
Well, obviously, some of these things we don't maybe publicize as much as we should, but we talked about our forensic services. That's obviously very beneficial to our law enforcement partners in the community. But state police is responsible for all the criminal justice systems that run in the state, whether it be that sex offender registry, the concealed weapons. We monitor all of the law enforcement information networks. We're the single link back to the federal government. So all the federal criminal justice files that come into the state, we monitor that. When you look at our specialty services, our dogs, our divers, our bomb squad. Our bomb squad is highly skilled. It's actually seen as a federal asset. So if there was a significant bombing in the Midwest, our bomb squad would be called to help in that situation. We have aviation assets, and that's another issue for communities. Why would you want to invest in aviation when the state police has that capabilities available for you? You look at some of the others, the multi-jurisdictional drug teams that we partner with our local partners, and I will tell you, Sheriff Roseman is a strong partner as we try to combat the drug problems in our communities. So we provide leadership in the multi-jurisdictional arena. Our motor carrier enforcement, obviously this governor is very insistent on getting our roads fixed. And so our motor vehicle, our commercial vehicle, they're out there every day looking at that part for the state and helps locals. I guess I could talk about our fire services. We do a lot of training in emergency management and homeland security, that arena, which is obviously very important to not only the western side of the state, but the state in general. So the list could go on.
And State Fire Marshal's office is through the state police.
Well, they actually, Governor Granholm removed that from the state police.
Okay.
Yeah, but we do fire training for arson investigators at the law enforcement level. We provide that training. Our training academy, we don't only just try to train troopers, but we offer a lot of our services is training local law enforcement in various leadership or firearms, we have a very large catalog of classes we provide.
Thank you. The public many times, all they see is the car on the road, and they think that's it. But when you talk about it, what an amazing range of very critically necessary services that are provided. And obviously, as the sheriff frequently reminds me, the cost of justice is not cheap.
That's right.
So, indeed. The governor's well known for acting in dog years. I think we've all had a chance to participate at some level on that. And I'm curious, what do you see in the future? What's it look like for the state police as you look down the road? And the future comes quicker under Governor Snyder than perhaps it might have with others. But maybe each of you could just take a turn and, what do you see for law enforcement, and what do you see for the state police as far as what's the future going to look like?
That's a pretty interesting question, and I will tell you, the state police tries to remain very apolitical. We don't see ourselves as being Democratic or Republican, but I will tell you, working for this governor has been a refreshing change, and he works in dog years, and he's not kidding. Things that I think, if you look at what we've accomplished even in the CLEAR committee, he looks at the next generation 911, the next generation of troopers, the next generation of law enforcement, and he is a very smart person, so he's like years ahead of you a lot of times. The technology alone, he has pushed us in the department to make that car a mobile office. He understands technology, and I think the future you're going to see a lot of more evidence-based technology for law enforcement services. I believe that he is committed to getting these cities off the most violent, deadly list, but I think he also pushes law enforcement to work together. He knows that not one agency can do it alone, and I've seen more support for law enforcement under this governor than I've seen in probably a decade of leadership at the governor's office. So it's, I think if you want economic development, you have to have safe cities, because if without it, you can't grow. So I think the future for law enforcement under this leadership is going to be optimistic.
Okay, great.
I really do think it's pretty unique. For those of us that have been around for a few years, we clearly understand this is a man that has a business plan for the state of Michigan, and the criminal justice system is part of it. And for him to come in and say, I would like to see some solutions or some ideas relatively soon, We've all gotten pretty used to the idea of, okay, if you take a clean sheet of paper, how would you build it today versus how it is in all actuality? And so again, I said, you know, that is a driving factor for our group. You know, and we quite often will say, you know, if we had a clean sheet of paper, would we do it the same way? And you know, he's a man with an administration that keeps driving in that direction. I think that's very positive. When we look at things that are starting to change up in those corridor cities, there's a great relationship going on between law enforcement, the courts, the Department of Corrections. By having the Department of Corrections involved with our group, they've opened up a receiving site at one of their old prison systems in the city of Detroit. So now, you know, law enforcement's able to take people off the street that have to be taken off the street to make the community safer.
Great.
I think also, just to add to that, the terms of measures and metrics and scorecards, if you just would have thought back 4 years ago, that was really not on a lot of people's radar. Now everything we do is driven by return on investment. If we're going to invest in that area, what's our strategic direction, what's our measure, what's our metric of success? And so when you even at the ground level have troopers talking about, well, what's the metric going to be for this service that we provide? We've really grown in just a very short period of time. So that return on investment, being very conscious of the tax dollar and making sure we're good stewards of that dollar, I think we're all more versed in that today than maybe we were in the past.
Well, that's great. So when I think of the regions, we've been involved. I'm on the Metro Council Board and been involved with the West Michigan Strategic Alliance, and we're all kind of getting our arms around the Regional Prosperity Initiative that Bill Russom and Sarah Wyckoff have been kind of going around the state and talking about. And basically what they've laid out is kind of a 10-region state. And West Michigan would have 13 counties in that. And they're looking, at least specifically, at pushing job training, workforce education, you know, 0 to 5, certain types of programming into those regions. I don't think the state police is one, though. It seems like mental health, state police are still retaining maybe their former regions, or do you see the state police moving into that 10 regional construct?
No, we've fully accepted and will develop that region. Currently we have districts, and we have 7 districts in the state, but those 7 districts are going to fall within that prosperity region. So we will fully, you know, basically adopt that within the state police.
Okay.
And it actually lays over very nicely with our 7 regions. It's very, very close. There's just a few minor adjustments, but no, we'll be participating on that prosperity region and be a full partner in that as well.
Okay, well, great. Are there any specialty crime areas that either of you see? I think of, we now have somebody who specializes in computer crime, and I know that that's a resource the sheriff has been able to share with others, and that you have the same type of thing. Is that an area of great growth, or are there other areas of crime that you see as particularly problematic?
You know, the technologies are, you know, the investigative skills involved in with the technologies is just phenomenal. Both our organizations are solving crime every day as a result of having technology experts on staff. Several years ago, we were able to become part of the iChat group that MSP was basing out of their 6th district office, and again, that helped us to develop, you know, the skill sets that we need for that. We've been able to acquire equipment. The ICAC is a big part of what we do, and our folks work in coordination with them. So, you know, having those computer skills is really critical, and you know, it is the benefits of resolving crime relatively quick now. So that's a big thing into the future.
And I think you also need to look at our Michigan. We house the Michigan Intelligence Operations Center, which is a fusion center bringing in all the data to one area, which can quickly, for a local, you know, do the intel piece of policing and do all the checking, and then get that back quickly to a local law enforcement agency. When Sheriff Roseman talks about computers today, our young people are so versed in computers, it's starting younger and younger. And if we look in our schools, the Facebook and the iPhones, we're seeing policing has to get to that level where we're as versed in those technologies as the kids are. We had a conversation today about the drugs that we're seeing kids use today. The prescription drugs are at an epidemic proportion. And so law enforcement needs to stay relevant. We need to stay current with what's affecting our kids and affecting our communities, our seniors. We're seeing more fraud activity as it relates to seniors. So there's no rest on the job. And you get comfortable addressing one thing and there'll be another new thing come and crop up. So, what keeps us up at night? Every night it's probably changing just a little bit. Something else out there that could be affecting our communities.
To follow up on that as well is this whole issue of Next Generation 911 is a task that we took on as a CLEAR group, and over about a 9 or 10 month period we were able to bring some subject matter experts together, and they really did develop a plan for the state of Michigan that is going to bring us well into the future. We were able to present that model on a national level, and and I have to say Michigan's ahead of the curve on that whole system.
We have a couple minutes left, and I really just wanted to ask one more question. Recently, the Holland Sentinel had an article where someone did a national ranking again of our cities, and I think you referred to that as far as Michigan having 5 of the most dangerous cities. And in our region, of course, we had different fates for Grand Haven, Holland, Muskegon, and Grand Rapids. And Muskegon, of course, was on the list as being one of the more dangerous places. And do you see? Is this something that the CLEAR group is taking on? I mean, do you see a regional solution? I mean, obviously the state police is becoming more involved in these areas. Is it going to take regional partnerships of cities, counties, the state to really go after this? How do you?
Well, I think so. I think it's important for every city, every governmental unit to look at what other governmental units are doing, what's effective in their communities. What's driving some of the crime-related issues. And so often people are just focused on what's going on in their own community. They're not taking the time and the initiative to look at what's being done elsewhere. I happen to think that the Ottawa County way is a great way. And
amen to that.
Yeah, and there's other communities that have looked at how we do things. And the reality is it's taken us quite a few years to get to where we are today.
Right.
And everybody wants solutions now, and I think they got to start looking at some long-range fixes for their communities.
Right.
And keep in mind, it took New York City 7 years to get off that violent crime list.
That's right.
So it will not happen overnight.
Right. Absolutely. And they actually focused on a lot of things like removing graffiti and
broken windows.
the small things.
Yeah. Right.
In order to do that.
Right.
Well, thank you both very much. Again, I'm Al Vanderberg, and this is Issues and Impacts. And today we had the pleasure of having Colonel Christy Isuues and Gary Rosema, Sheriff of Ottawa County, with us. And thank you very much for your time and participation. It's been a very interesting discussion.
Good.
And we'll look forward to seeing it out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you, Al.
Sheriff?
Thanks much.